Hello, and welcome to this student training information session for the Concern Debates 2025 to 2026 programme. I will be your host today. My name is Anya Keating, and I work on the Global Citizenship Education team at Concern Worldwide. To give you a brief overview of what we'll be looking at in today's information session, we'll be taking a little look at the work of Concern Worldwide as an organisation and the benefits of the debates programme. We'll then take a look at the Concern Debates team, so the people behind the scenes who help everything run nice and smoothly. We'll look at the structure of the debates, so how it's set out over the course of the year. We'll take a look at team roles and the responsibilities of the various team members and speakers. We'll be looking at some top tips for debating. We'll take a look at the marking sheet so that you understand how marks are assigned as you prepare your debates. We'll look a little bit at language for solidarity. So thinking about the words and the terms that we're using in our speeches and making sure that they show solidarity with communities that we are talking about. We'll then look at all the wonderful resources that are available to help you as you prepare your debates, as well as where to find extra information. And finally, we'll take a look at the motions for this year's league phase. So the first three motions that have been announced for this year's competition. So a little bit of background on Concern Worldwide as an organisation. So Concern is an international humanitarian organisation dedicated to the reduction of suffering. So humanitarian meaning working for human needs, okay? So basic needs and rights such as a right to food, water, and education, and a livelihood. So in order to achieve that, Concern mostly looks at the following SDGs. So number one, of course, no poverty. But it wouldn't be enough to just look at this goal on its own. We also have to take a look at number two, zero hunger, which is, very closely linked to no poverty. We look at good health and well-being within communities. We look at quality education, so making sure everyone has access to learning and education. And then finally, we look at gender equality. So if we focus very well on these 5 SDGs, we should be able to help and support communities to lift out of extreme poverty. So these here, the 4 boxes on the side, are the main areas that Concern works on. So emergency response is probably what you imagine it to be if there has been a natural disaster. So, for example, severe flooding, maybe prolonged drought, or a hurricane, an earthquake. Sometimes the emergency can be man-made, so it could have been conflict, a war, fighting. Okay, something that really disrupts a population and services and causes a lot of devastation. So in these instances, Concern tries to provide an emergency response. So it might be trucking in water, providing food supplies, maybe cooking utensils if people have had to leave homes behind. The second box then, development support, is more long term. So we understand that, after an emergency or a disaster, or if there's a community that's suffering from extreme poverty, it takes more than just an emergency response. So development support takes time. So sometimes years and years to build up services properly within a community. So the idea is if we do this well, in time, Concern should be able to step away and the community is resilient enough on its own. So this means focusing on livelihoods. So are people able to make a living? Are there skills and training that Concern can provide to help people start a business or run their farm more efficiently. We also focus on gender equality. So if there have been groups of women that have been excluded maybe from education in the past, is training something we can provide them? Are schools also accessible for girls? So making sure that all opportunities are available to all. Making sure education services are up and running, and the same for health and nutrition, so that communities have access to nutritious food, um, vaccines, medicines needed to stay healthy, and education, giving everyone an opportunity to, yeah, make a better life for themselves. The final two boxes here are work that takes place more in Ireland. So citizenship education is what we're doing through the debates programme. But we also do workshops and TY programs that help people to look at global issues and understand how everything is interconnected. Advocacy and campaigns. So this means speaking up for communities that we feel have been left behind. So making sure that we're, demanding enough overseas development aid, that there's justice for communities so that nobody should have to suffer extreme poverty. So here is a map of all of the countries that we worked in last year. So it was 27 countries altogether. And yeah, it ranges from across Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and then over here, Haiti and the Caribbean. So there's a wide range of countries that we work in, and obviously the needs vary depending on the context. So some places will struggle a lot with climate change, but they'll also maybe be experiencing conflict, or other natural disasters as well. So a lot of people believe that at Concern we send Irish people away to all of these countries to do humanitarian work. But actually, 90% of us are working in our home communities and nations of origin. So if we have a program in Kenya, that just means that actually 90% of our workforce there are from Kenya. We think this is very important because if you're local to an area, you understand the context better, you have the language, you can speak and relate to people a bit better. There's also more trust. And then I suppose it's relying on the expertise that's already there within these contexts. So within all the countries that we work, there are, highly dedicated employees who have studied and trained, and they're really enthusiastic and eager to help their communities. So it's really great to be able to give people an opportunity to work with Concern, so they can dedicate their passion towards making their home communities a better place for everyone. So, global citizenship education at Concern takes many forms. It is a type of lifelong learning, and it's all about understanding how interconnected our global community is. So that you're looking at, why is the world the way it is? What are the root causes of the injustices that we see? Because if we can understand what the root causes are, we can better understand how to fix them and how to make positive changes. So we have our debates program, which we're focusing on today, but we also do a primary debates program. We do a TY work experience. We do Speak, Act, Do projects across the country, as well as school workshops and World Day workshops. So if you are interested in any of the above, you can take a closer look at our website, and contact schools at concern.net for more information. With global citizenship education, the idea is that if young people are engaging and learning about humanitarian and global justice issues, so things such as poverty, hunger, climate change, we are able to raise awareness and help young people to engage critically. So, thinking critically about these issues, why they exist, and how things could be done better. We want young people to feel empowered to take action on these issues. Um, this hopefully would lead to young people coming together in support to end extreme poverty and drive action. So, lobbying politicians, putting pressure on policymakers who have the power to make real change. And ultimately, we hope that this would make sustainable and lasting improvements to the lives of the extremely poor in the world. So, a quick introduction to the debate programme. It is a part of our global citizenship education repertoire. And as I said before, it is a lifelong learning process. So the debates programme is based on the values of solidarity, equality, inclusion, and cooperation. It is a great way to research the important issues of our time, question what's going on around us, and a way of just better understanding and learning about the world. Debating is a great way to help you develop some brilliant skills for life, but also for school and for the workplace. So it requires teamwork skills, you're honing your research skills, critical thinking, as well as public speaking and refutation and rebuttal. So while these are all critical skills for the debates, they're also critical life skills, especially in a world where we are so inundated with information. We need to be able to think critically about what's going on and keep, I suppose, an open mind. So the Concern Debates programme has been around for a long time. This year is actually our 41st anniversary. So over 20,000 debates have happened since its inception, which means over 85,000 students have taken part. And generally, there's about 160 plus post-primary schools that participate each year from across Ireland. Why do you call it a programme rather than a competition? So, although we do acknowledge that it has a competitive element, we don't want that to be the focus of the programme. So, we want the focus to be on the learning that takes place. So, you're researching, you're building awareness and knowledge of key issues and the big problems of our time. And this is the most valuable part of the experience. So, no matter whether you win or lose a debate, just by engaging in the process, you've actually gained so much. So, everyone wins in that regard. So, a quick introduction to the debates team here at Concern. So we've got Olga, who mostly looks after Dublin schools and surrounding counties such as Kildare, Wicklow, Wexford, and also Waterford this year. And she also takes care of our volunteers. So it is volunteer adjudicators that actually mark everyone's debate. So without them, we wouldn't be able to run the programme. Maeve Mooney then looks after schools around the south of the country, so Cork, Kerry, Limerick, Tipperary, Kilkenny, and also Carlow. Owen Connolly looks after schools in Galway, Clare, Mayo, Sligo, Roscommon, so mainly the central counties and counties to the west of Ireland. And then Amelia Deehan looks after our schools in Northern Ireland and border counties. The debate is structured as follows. So the first three motions are debated throughout the league phase, and schools that get through from the league phase go into a knockout phase after Christmas, and then the final three phases are in person. So the league and knockout phases all take place online. And from the quarterfinals on, debates are in person for the schools that get through to these rounds. So between October and December, your team will debate against 3 other schools. These will be live online using Zoom, and you record the debate. You'll have a different motion for each debate, and you will be told whether you are the proposition or opposition side. An adjudicator will be sent the video through our debate platform, and then you'll receive the results and feedback afterwards. So once you've uploaded your debate, we then send it on to an adjudicator. Now, it can often take time for all of this to happen. So we do ask, especially in the league phase when there's a lot of debates happening all at once, we do ask that you allow for a week or so for your results to be sent back. Following on from the league phase then, in January to February, the top 64 schools go through to the knockout rounds. There are 3 knockout rounds, so if your team progresses through all of these, you reach the quarterfinals. So again, the knockout rounds are online. In March and April, the quarter and semi-finals will be held. These are in person, and depending on which schools get through, we usually pick midway venues and Dublin for the semi-finals. The final then is already booked in for May the 7th in the Helix DCU. So a few rules as you prepare for your first debate. So the first one, there are 4 speakers per team, but schools may have larger teams with several substitutes and researchers. So some schools want it to be a whole class experience, and for each debate, they might pick 4 new speakers. That is absolutely fine. Other teams like to maybe keep the captain the same, but rotate the other speakers. Or sometimes they like to rotate the captain as well to give everybody the opportunity. And some schools approach it with the 4 same team members for each debate. So it's completely up to your school and your mentor on how you want to approach the program. Rule 2, you must have a consent form completed by your parent, guardian to participate. So these must be completed before you participate in your first debate. Next, our motions all focus on global development issues, sustainability, equality, and human rights. So all of our motions really relate to the work of Concern and its values. At a given debate, 4 students speak, with the captain speaking twice. So the captain opens the debate for their team and also provides the closing speech. So they have 4.5 minutes to speak at the start and then 4.5 minutes to speak at the end. Each speaker has 4.5 minutes to speak altogether. There are time penalties if students go over time, and we'll go through that later. Debates are marked by volunteer adjudicators, so you should expect to receive your results within 7 days of uploading the video. Sometimes this can take a little bit of extra time, but we do try and get your results back to you as soon as possible. So a few top tips for debating. Being passionate about your topic. This is something we would advise. So it is very important that you sound like you believe in what you're saying. We also thoroughly believe that even if you get the side of the motion that you were hoping not to get, by the time you've done your research and prepared your speech, you will believe that what you're saying is true, and you'll be passionate about it. All of the motions we've selected very carefully in order so that they are debatable from both sides. Second, so speaking so quietly that no one can hear you. Obviously, this is a no. So we advise that before you record your first debate, maybe take a practice. So practice speaking into the laptop or computer that you're recording the debate on and listening back. Can you hear everyone clearly? Is it a bit muffled? Do you need to speak more clearly into the microphone? Speaking really loudly. Again, it's more about being heard. So sometimes if you're actually, speaking too loudly, it can come across quite crackly, especially through a Zoom or online account. Using facts and figures to back up your argument. We absolutely recommend this. So when you're making your argument, definitely back it up with sources. So you'll have done research. So be sure to say what that was, where you found this information, where you got these statistics, okay, so that we know that you have verified what arguments you're bringing into your debate. Giving the audience eye contact. Yes, this is very important. So obviously this is hard during the online stages, but instead we ask that you address the camera. So we know that it is a little bit different when there's not an audience or when the adjudicators aren't there right in front of you, but do try to address the screen so that the adjudicator feels like you are speaking to them when they look back over your debate and mark it. Making lots of jokes. This is more of a depends. So obviously it's okay to introduce humor into your debate, but it depends on the topic. So if you're speaking about something like, extreme poverty, then it's probably not going to be appropriate to be cracking jokes. Whereas if you're talking about maybe your generation and want to add in, a funny anecdote, then of course that is welcome. Being enthusiastic, definitely required. Looking at your notes, again, it's a combination. So of course you're allowed to have notes. We expect you to, have your bullet points written out, but try not to read everything from your notes. It's really important that you're looking at the screen, engaging with your audience, and just using your notes as a base to work off. So a little bit on rebuttal and refutation. So these two elements here are what really set a debate apart from public speaking. So rather than just coming to a debate with your pre-prepared speech, the adjudicators will really be looking for the following two elements. Okay, and quite a few marks are allocated for your ability to rebut and to refute the other side. So to look a little closer, to rebut an argument is to discredit it by offering an alternative and stronger argument. So, for example, our opponents argue that it is the responsibility of the government to ensure that people are recycling. But I disagree. Individuals have a responsibility to recycle properly, and I will tell you why. So you're offering an alternative way of looking at things. So you're saying, sure, that's one way of looking at it, but we see it differently, and we'll tell you why. A refutation then is to produce evidence, so actual facts or figures, in order to prove what your opposition has said to be untrue. So here, for example, our opponent stated that people in Ireland do not want to return their plastic bottles. But according to Return, the operator of the scheme, Irish consumers have returned over 1.8 billion drinks containers since the launch of the scheme in February 2024. So you have just offered evidence and proof that what the opposition said was false. Who is on the debates team? So the team roles are as follows. There will be a captain, and their responsibility at the start of the debate is to introduce the team, define the motion, and then outline what their team's arguments are going to be. They also go at the end of the debate to sum up their team's arguments, and it's their chance then to offer any last refutation or rebuttals based on what the other team has said. Speaker two will provide their points for the argument, and they will have a chance to offer rebuttals and refutation based on what the other team has said. And it is the same for speakers 3 and speakers 4. So they outline their points, the points that they have prepared for their side of the motion, And then they should leave, I suppose, a 30-second or so window to allow them time to offer a rebuttal or refutation based on what the other team has said. The timekeeper's role. So the timekeeper has a very important role to play. They are responsible for timing each speech and signalling the time for all the debate team members. They also then complete the timekeeper sheet as the debate plays out. The role is traditionally filled by a student, but a teacher can substitute if needed. The timekeeper must ring the bell at 3 minutes and again at 4 minutes 15 seconds. So when the person speaking hears it for the second time, they know, okay, I need to wrap up my speech now or I'll incur a time penalty. So we ask for online debates that each school provides a timekeeper who's in the room to ring the bell. This is to allow for any lag over Zoom or difficulties with hearing, say, a bell that's rung in one room over Zoom in the other. So we have a timekeeper for each team. They calculate the penalties at the end of the debate and they provide them to the chairperson, who will announce any penalties before they end the recording. For face-to-face debates, it's only the proposing team that provides the sole timekeeper for the debate, and they fill in the timesheet for both schools. The timekeeper's role is very important because often results can sometimes be decided on time penalties. So when a debate is very close and there's literally a matter of just 1 or 2 points in it, it can be the penalties that actually make the decision. So what's important to go over here is the penalties for going over your speaking time. So if you go over 4 minutes 30 seconds to 5 minutes, you're deducted 1 mark. If you go beyond 5 minutes, so you speak for between 5 and 5.5, you're deducted 2 marks. And if you speak for 5.5 or more minutes, you're deducted 3 marks. And it's important to note that once you go beyond that 4.5-minute mark, the adjudicator is not actually assigning any more marks to your points. So you really are better off wrapping up and making sure that your speech finishes within the 4.5-minute mark. So let's have a little look at the marking sheet and how marks are assigned for your debates. So for content, there are 10 marks going for your knowledge and understanding of the subject. So this is where your sources come into play, that you've thought of the topic from different points of view. Relevance to the motion gets 5 marks. So again, make sure that any point you're making is related back to the motion, so that you're not going off on a tangent and making points that actually don't really relate to the motion that's being argued. Use and variety of sources. So yeah, try and pull from various different sources. So maybe newspapers, but also websites, papers, research. And also we ask that not to have your sources all Irish. So are there sources that you can find from different countries who maybe have experienced the issue that you're talking about in a different way? Debating skills then, so there's a lot of marks for your refutation and rebuttal. So that's really proving that you've been listening to the other team, what they're saying, and you're actively responding to it. Your ability to persuade, communicate, and engage. So as we spoke about before, speaking to the camera, coming across as passionate and enthusiastic about your arguments. And then making sure that your arguments are logical and well constructed. So do your points have, I suppose, a flow? And is there a clear link between the points that you're making? Captain's duties then. So the captain has to define the motion. So that's really how they're starting their speech. You're defining the motion, or if you're the opposition, you're responding to that definition, and maybe offering an alternative definition for how your team have interpreted the motion. And then very clearly outlining what your team arguments are going to be. They also go at the end to summarize their team's arguments, and it's your last opportunity to offer a rebuttal for the other team's arguments. Teamwork then gets 10 marks overall. So teamwork, one way I suppose an adjudicator might see an example of teamwork is if they can see your teammates in the background exchanging notes, or maybe whispering what refutation or rebuttal could be used for the next speaker. Another way the teamwork comes across is if there is a thread woven through a team's speech. So maybe each speaker from the same team opens their speech with the same quote, or closes their speech with a quote or a saying. Or another way of showing teamwork is actually referencing what your teammates have already said. So some top tips as you go about preparing your debate. Make sure that you define the motion in the captain's speech. Use reputable sources and quote your sources in your speech. So again, maybe you saw something interesting on TikTok, but where did that person get their information? So can you find the original source? And is that source a reputable one that you could use in your debate? We recommend that you research both sides, so this will help with rebuttal and refutation. If you can imagine or predict what arguments the other team are going to come up with, you will be much better prepared with your rebuttals and refutations. We advise that you plan your speech like a piece of writing, so making sure it flows. Does it have a beginning, middle, and end? Remember to be persuasive, so your language techniques, the body language that you use. So are you looking at the camera? Maybe you're using some hand gestures to get your point across, the even engaging tone of voice as well. Use the marking sheet as a tool, so you know where the marks are going to go, and that I think is very useful as you prepare your speech. Practice and time yourself so that you fall under 4.5 minutes, including rebuttal and refutations. So don't plan for your speech to be 4.5 minutes, because then if you try and incorporate a rebuttal and refutation on top of that, you'll be deducted marks for going over time. So aim for your speech to last maybe around the 4-minute mark, so that you have that wiggle room to offer a rebuttal or refutation based on an argument from the other team. And then that shared line or shared thread that I spoke about before could be a line at the end, such as, "We urge you to support our motion," and it connects your speeches like an invisible thread. So a little look at language for solidarity. So as an organization within international development, we've been changing how we look at our work from a charity approach to more of a solidarity approach. And the language we use actually reflects these changes. So just to give you a bit of a clearer picture of what I mean by this, when we talk about solidarity, it's not feeling sorry for or simply helping people. Because if we think about charity, it kind of portrays groups of people as helpless, not able to do anything for themselves, just waiting for aid to come their way, which is not the reality at all. So the reality is that the groups of people that Concern works with are active participants. Okay, so they're constantly helping us to understand how aid should be distributed, where the greatest needs are, what the biggest challenges are in a community. So they know the changes that are needed, and they are active in making sure that programs and any aid that's provided is used in the best possible way. So solidarity means everyone working together for global change. And it actually means addressing the root causes of poverty, not just the problem. So as you can see here in this picture, if we keep just looking at the stain and trying to mop up the stain, it'll keep happening. Okay, we're not looking at the root cause, which is I suppose, the bend in the pipe here. Whereas if we can tackle the root cause, fix the pipe in the first place, there won't be any stain. So that's what we mean about the root causes of poverty. So what's causing poverty in the first place? Because if we can tackle those, less people will have to suffer that fate. So language is a powerful tool and it can help us understand the world around us. It helps us to understand people's lived experiences and the reasons why things happen. It can also be used to cause harm by emphasizing differences, perpetuating stereotypes, or making us think less of some people or places. So language and the way you use it is an important factor in who wins a debate. So again, there's some language that we believe belongs more in that charity view of the world, okay? Whereas we want to be moving towards using language that shows greater solidarity, that we're all in it together, we're all working towards justice. So third world is a term that we want to leave in the past. Again, third world kind of denotes that it's lesser people from the third world are behind, not as advanced as, say, the first world. And also, it's a confusing term because we all live in one world. So it's a very strange conception to split it into the first and third. So we rather use terms like low income countries or lower income countries. As it's a little bit more specific, it focuses on, I suppose, the GDP of a country rather than, branding them as just third world. The second one here, poor people. So rather than saying poor people, we prefer to use people living in poverty or people who are experiencing hunger or food insecurity. So this way, we are not reducing a person to being just poor. Okay, they might be living in poverty, but there is so much more to that person than just being poor. And I suppose being poor, it dehumanizes them. So this instead is saying it's something that's happening to them. So they're people who are living in poverty rather than poor people. So a simple switch, but it's a powerful way of showing better solidarity with groups. Um, the terms developing world or underdeveloped countries. So again, these terms can be quite problematic because the reality is that every country is developing in some way. And there's not one way to develop either. So I think, many would argue that places like the United States are considered to be developed, but they are also highly unsustainable. There's also a lot of corruption. They certainly haven't done things perfectly. So to expect every country to develop in that same way is unrealistic. And it's not what every country wants for themselves either. So instead, again, we say lower income countries, if that's the case, or if we're talking about richer countries, you can say that, or higher income countries. I guess just being a little bit more specific. So developing world and third world, they're very generalizing, painting broad groups of people with the same brush. Whereas if we can be a bit more specific about which countries or places we're actually talking about, then that's much better. And then this is one that we come across a lot in our work at Concern. So before we would have talked about the people who received aid from Concern as beneficiaries. But I suppose this denotes that they were benefiting from aid. So I suppose it conjures up images of the charitable givers. They're the ones giving aid to people who, aren't active. They're just waiting to benefit from and receive this aid. Whereas, as I said earlier, that is never the case. People that we work with are actively participating in our programs, helping to shape what they look like and whose needs are being served. So I think participant is a better term to capture anyone who is working with our programs, or we could refer to them as community members either. So with this language, we just want you to, we want it to be food for thought. So it's not that you're going to be, marked down if you do end up using any of these terms. But we do just want you to think as you prepare your debates, is this the best term I could use? Is this a term that's kind of playing into a stereotype or very generalizing? Can I be a little bit more specific in the terms that I choose? So where to find information? We have a load of resources on our debates webpage. So research links for each motion. We also have a podcast for each motion available with an accompanying worksheet. So this is great if you're doing debates prep as an entire class group, as well as the roles, the rules, the structure, all the dates for this year's competition. As I mentioned, we have a podcast which is now available on Spotify. So if you look up Concern Worldwide Debates Podcast, Debating Development, you'll be able to see our podcast here with the worksheet. If you're looking for more information, so marking sheets, videos, they are all available on our website. We have a section for mentors, and we also have a section for student debaters. Another resource that can be very useful is previous videos. So we've recorded all of our finals over the years, and it can be a great way of looking at different approaches to debates, how to work in a rebuttal. If you're the captain, what's a great way of introducing your team and defining emotion. So just remember as well, if you are looking at any of these are the finals. So any teams that have come this far have about 9 debates under their belt. So they've had a lot of practice before getting to this stage. So don't be too harsh if you're comparing yourself now at the start of the year to these teams. You learn so much and grow so much as a team with each debate that you do. And finally, the motions for this year's league phase are as follows. So round 1 is disinformation is the biggest threat to peace in 2025. Round 2, boycotting is the most effective way to end fast fashion. And round 3, global commitments to ending world hunger are a load of hot air. Again, we have loads of resources available. So we have a Trello board with links to studies and research and articles, as well as the podcast that I spoke about previously. So they're a great place to get started. Our team have been working hard, pulling these resources together to help you approach your first 3 debates. So I would definitely recommend taking a look. I want to wish you the best of luck as you prepare your debates. We hope you enjoy the experience and learn a lot in the process. Okay, thanks everyone.